Alright, welcome back my dear students. So in the last lecture I showed you how to read information from the database. Let's actually show you how to do something else. So let me just comment this out real quick here. Alright. And we are going to be selecting more stuff from the database. Alright. Now on this get right here, I'm gonna use this one and the results right here. On this one here, we are selecting everything. What if we wanted just to select only based on certain condition? Well, we could do that. All right. So CodeIgniter offer us some other syntax that we can use instead of get. All right. We could use get along with something else called where. So we can say this db where. All right, and then we can type in here, let's say for example we get a user ID on top here. All right, and we can say where ID, which is the column in the database, comma, equals this user ID right here. All right, beautiful. So we type in this first, this db where ID equals the user ID, and then we still get the users table. All right, we make that query. Now let's go back to our view because we need to comment that out and uncomment this. Save. Now we need to pass in the user's controllers the ID that we want, right? So we need to pass in the ID right here. All right, so what ID we want? We want the ID number 1. Save. All right, so let's go here and enter. Now you can see that it is actually getting the username out of that ID of 1. If I switch the ID to 2, save, we are getting the Suave username, the second user. All right, we can also pass in parameters in the URL. Like this. Let's say for example we say user ID here, and then we'll get this. Remember, we are in the user's controller, right? We'll paste that in there, and of course we don't have that, so what's gonna happen here? We're gonna get an error, a nice pretty error. All right, styled by CodeIgniter. But how do we pass in this user ID then? Well, since we are using it right here in the show, it only makes sense to pass it in right here. /2, enter. That was weird, right? But this is how you do it in CodeIgniter. All right, so we pass in this get request for Rico. All right, it comes in here, and then we can of course use that same user ID to pass it into our user model that's gonna take care of it. All right, and do this query and return back the result, and then we can see it on the view here. All right, but remember that we are loading the view right here, and whatever result we get from the user model, we pass it into this array that we're using to pass in the data here. Hopefully you are getting this. If not, stay for 30 seconds and I will explain it again. If you already know how this works, go to the next lecture. All right, so let's do this again for the 30 seconds or maybe a minute for those of you that did not understand it. For those of you that understood it, jump into the nets because I don't want to bore you. But anyway, so we got the controller here, right? We are passing in this variable here. It could be a static, but right now we are using this right here. All right, this is gonna come in a string number, right, to here. All right, that's the way we use it. Now we can use it anyway down here because we are getting it right here. Okay, that's fine. So we are using that. We got this variable available, right? So here we We got the model loading automatically, remember, in the autoload.php. So then we use it right here, user underscore model, because we type in the name of that model. Since we are loading it automatically, we can use the name of it to refer to it. And then we're referring to the get users method inside that user underscore model. All right, so this is the get users method. Then we're passing in this user ID that we have right here, right? We're passing it in. Now, from this user model, we make all this code happen, right? We get the ID, where ID user equals user ID. We get it from the table. We get all that record back, and we return it. So we return this in a result of objects. All right, in an array of objects. Return it back to controllers, and then whatever we get back from here, right, from this function, we save it into this data array right here. All right, and then we transfer that data as a second parameter into the view that we are loading right here. All right, in the second parameter we pass in this array. All right, and then in the user view we are actually receiving that data. Remember that whatever we have here, that's going to be a variable. We are using that variable right here to loop through it, because remember, this is an array of objects now. So we loop through it, all right, from that array, and we get that as an object now that is going to have the properties. And the properties are basically the columns of the table users. So in this case, we are actually using object because we are making this variable dynamically right here. So we're using that variable to access the properties or the columns of that table. In this case, is username. All right. Hopefully you understood that. For those of you out there that are a little confused, again, if you did not understand it, rewind this couple minutes again and you will understand it, and keep actually coding and you will understand it more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture.